What if everything you've ever feared about death was based on a misunderstanding? What if, at the very moment your final breath escapes your body, you're not met by darkness or oblivion, but by something or someone profound, radiant, and deeply familiar? Maybe it's a face you've long forgotten, or a presence that feels like home, even if you've never seen it before in this lifetime. Have you ever wondered who meets you when you die? It's the question that quietly lives inside every heart, regardless of belief. You might try to bury it beneath the noise of daily life, but it lingers. It comes to the surface when someone you love passes, or in those rare moments when the silence gets a little too loud. It's a question that strips away ego, culture, and even religion, because no matter who you are, where you live, or what you believe, you will one day cross the threshold from life into what lies beyond, and the moment you do, someone or something will be there. For most of your life, death has probably been described in final terms, a stopping point, a mystery wrapped in fear. You've been taught to fear the unknown, to resist the inevitable. But there is another way to see it, not as an end, but as a passage, a continuation. And at the center of that passage is a profound truth. You were never meant to make this transition alone. There was one man who spent his life touching the veil between this world and the next, and returning with answers. His name was Edgar Cayce. Known as the Sleeping Prophet, Cayce performed over 14,000 documented psychic readings while in a trance-like state, where he would seemingly disconnect from his conscious self and tap into a universal stream of knowledge he called the Akashic Records. These weren't parlor tricks or vague spiritual ramblings. His readings included precise medical diagnoses, past life journeys, and startlingly detailed accounts of what happens when the soul leaves the physical body. What made Cayce so extraordinary was not just his gift but his humility. A devout Christian from Kentucky, he never sought fame or fortune. In fact, many of his readings were given freely, sometimes at the cost of his own health. But time and again his sessions pointed to one core idea. Consciousness does not end at death. In fact, it becomes more awake. According to Cayce, the moment you die is not chaotic. It's not painful. It's not empty. In those first seconds after your final breath, you begin to emerge, not dissolve. The veil lifts, time collapses, and the soul steps out of the body as if it were removing a garment it no longer needs. What's more incredible is what happens next. Because you're not drifting into a void. You're being received. He spoke of a sacred passageway, not unlike what mystics have called the borderland. This is the spiritual hallway between dimensions, a space without time, without gravity, without fear. It's here, according to Cayce, that a welcoming takes place. Beings, not randomly assigned or generically spiritual, but deeply connected to your soul's journey, gather. Imagine that. Instead of cold darkness, you're met with warmth, with recognition. You're not questioned, you're not judged, you're embraced. These presences are not abstract ideas. They're conscious, radiant entities. Some are loved ones who passed before you, grandparents, siblings, friends, even beloved pets. Others may be spirit guides, beings who've watched over you since before your birth, perhaps, for lifetimes. And then there are those who Cayce described as light beings, highly evolved souls, ascended masters, who radiate a love so powerful that all fear melts away in their presence. What determines who shows up? Cayce's readings suggest it's not based on merit or dogma. It's resonance. Everything in the universe, including you, vibrates, and the frequency of your soul, shaped by your thoughts, your choices, your inner life, acts like a spiritual signature. The beings who greet you reflect that. You draw them in not because of what you've believed, but because of who you've become. This idea shifts everything. Death, then, is not a courtroom or a test. It's a reunion. It's the ultimate remembering. As the density of the body falls away, you begin to recall who you truly are. Not a name or a role or a story, but a soul. Timeless, boundless, and deeply loved. Still, it's easy to wonder, how can any of this be known? Cayce didn't claim these truths from speculation. He accessed them in session after session, often when asked to locate a recently deceased loved one. Time and again he described them in peaceful states, often surrounded by familiar presences, transitioning gently and naturally. He even gave details about specific welcomers that would later be confirmed by family members, people they hadn't spoken about but who had a deep emotional connection to the one who passed. What's most moving about Cayce's revelation is not just the reassurance that we are not alone in death, but the deeper message it carries about life. And if the soul continues, if consciousness is not extinguished, then everything you do now, every thought, every act of love, every moment of reflection, shapes what comes next. The welcomers who greet you are not strangers. They're connected to your inner life, your emotional evolution, your soul history. And that means you're already preparing for that moment right now without even realizing it. Death, in this light, is not a failure of the body. It's a graduation of the soul. It's the shedding of a limited form so that you can rejoin the greater field of consciousness from which you came. That threshold, the moment of passing, is sacred. It's not something to fear. It's something to understand, to honor. You don't have to wait until your final breath to touch that truth. You can begin tuning into it now, through your intuition, through dreams, through moments of stillness where something greater seems to whisper just beneath the noise. What if the very beings who will one day greet you have already tried to reach you in subtle ways? What if they're closer than you think? What if the mystery of death has never been about endings at all, but about remembrance? Because when you cross that final threshold, you won't be lost. You'll be found. There's a moment, so subtle, so sacred, where life as you know it slips quietly away and something much older, much deeper begins to awaken within you. It happens after the final breath, after the heartbeat stills, and after the body which once carried your every experience becomes still and silent. But your consciousness doesn't vanish. Instead, it steps across a threshold that the mystics call the borderland. The borderland is not heaven. It's not a dream. It's not yet the full afterlife. It is something in between, a liminal realm where the soul adjusts, awakens, and begins to shed the layers of earthly identity it once held so tightly. In this space, time is no longer measured by clocks or calendars. It stretches and collapses, loops and folds in on itself. You don't feel minutes or hours. You feel expansion. You feel presence. You feel remembrance. Edgar Cayce, in his deep trance readings, described this phase of transition with stunning clarity. He spoke of it as a space of divine orientation, where the soul, now free from the weight of the body, begins to remember not just who it was in this life, but who it has always been. You begin to recall your existence before this incarnation. You remember the countless journeys you've taken. You feel the echoes of lifetimes not bound by name, gender, or story. You begin to recognize that you are not your history. You are your essence. In this sacred in-between, the illusions of earthly life begin to dissolve. The titles you carried, mother, teacher, artist, survivor, no longer define you. The dramas that consumed you, the pain that once felt endless, the regrets, the victories, all of it softens like fog under sunlight. What remains isn't a blank slate. It's your core being, radiant, whole, and untethered. Here in the borderland, you're not alone. Though you may not yet see the beings who will accompany you forward, their presence begins to surround you. Some souls report an immediate sense of being watched over, not in judgment, but in comfort, like being wrapped in a familiar warmth you can't quite name. Others describe a feeling of floating, of being guided through soft light, not a tunnel but a corridor of consciousness, where thought becomes movement and emotion becomes color. According to Cayce, this stage is deeply personal. Your experience in the borderland is shaped by your level of awareness at the moment of passing, and by the frequency your soul has cultivated during your lifetime. For some, the borderland is filled with beauty, music, and a deep sense of peace. For others, it may begin in confusion, a kind of disorientation, as the mind clings to what it once knew. But always, without exception, the soul is met with guidance. It is never abandoned. This is where time unravels. Not in a way that is frightening, but in a way that is liberating. You begin to understand that the past and future are not fixed. You feel past lives not as distant memories, but as living threads still pulsing through your consciousness. You see moments from your life, not in linear order but all at once, like a vast tapestry being unfolded, not to be judged, but to be understood. You feel for the first time how every choice carried ripples. You see how every act of kindness shaped the unseen world. You witness how your pain birthed compassion. Nothing was wasted. And here, perhaps for the first time, you realize something so startling and yet so familiar. You are not the one who was born, who struggled, who died. You are the one who observed it all. The timeless awareness behind every breath, every tear, every heartbeat. You are not the story. You are the presence, the story unfolded within. The borderland is where this realization begins to crystallize. You feel yourself loosening the grip on the ego, the I that thought it was separate, that believed it was in control. You feel yourself expanding into something much larger, much quieter, and infinitely more compassionate. You don't lose your sense of self. You remember your true self, the part of you that was never born and will never die. Some traditions describe this space as the astral plane. Others call it the intermediate realm, the veil or the passageway. But regardless of language, the experience is consistent. It is a place of remembrance. Cayce's readings make it clear. The soul is never thrust into the afterlife unprepared. There is always this sacred pause, a moment to breathe without lungs, a moment to see without eyes, a moment to feel your eternal nature without the distortion of form. And yet, as timeless as this space feels, it is also a space of movement. You are not meant to stay in the borderland forever. It is a sacred intermission, a time of reorientation before your soul continues onward, either into further realms of spiritual learning, into a new incarnation, or into a state of rest and reflection, depending on the unique path of your soul's evolution. The borderland offers an invitation. Will you remember who you are? Will you let go of who you thought you were? Will you allow the illusions to melt and in their place stand in the quiet power of your eternal self? In this realm, beings of light often begin to make themselves known. Sometimes they appear in familiar forms, a beloved relative, a mentor, even a pet. Other times they are simply felt, as peace, as a warm breeze, as an overwhelming sense of homecoming. Their presence helps you make sense of where you are. They do not tell you what to believe. They remind you what you've always known. You begin to recognize the borderland, not as a place out there, but as something you've touched many times before, in dreams, in meditation, in those strange moments when time seemed to stop and your awareness slipped past the edges of the physical world. You've visited it in near-death experiences, in moments of deep grief, in the final hours beside a dying loved one, when the veil felt thinner than usual. The borderland is not new to you. You've always been connected to it. You just didn't have words for it. Now, as the soul hovers in this space, it is given the most sacred opportunity of all, to awaken, to see with new eyes, to know not from books or beliefs, but from direct experience, that life is not a straight line from birth to death. It is a circle, a spiral, a divine unfolding. And you are not separate from it. You are the center of it. You are not lost in death. You are found in truth. And in the borderland, the first truth you remember is this: you were never the body. You were always the light behind it. There's something deeply humbling about realizing that even in death, you are never truly alone. From the moment you enter this life, unseen forces surround you, guiding, protecting, nudging, and when the time comes for you to leave this world, that divine presence doesn't disappear. It becomes more visible, more intimate, more undeniable. Edgar Cayce, the man many have called the sleeping prophet, made one truth repeatedly clear throughout his thousands of readings. No soul crosses into the next life unaccompanied. Ever. You may have imagined death as a solitary journey, a personal reckoning, a quiet vanishing into the unknown, but according to Cayce's revelations, the opposite is true. The moment the soul releases from the body, a sacred procession begins, a gathering of presences, not random, not unfamiliar, but preordained companions, intimately connected to your soul's journey, appears. This welcoming is not just a courtesy. It's a rite of passage, orchestrated beyond time, chosen long before your physical birth. It reflects the eternal truth that you, as a soul, have never been separate from the collective field of divine intelligence. You've never walked your path alone, not truly, and death is no exception. Cayce described this transition as one of incredible beauty and precision. There is a choreography to it, a seamless movement between dimensions, and at its center are the beings who come to greet you. Some of them you'll recognize instantly. Their presence feels like warmth, like memory, like home. Others may be unfamiliar to your conscious mind, but your soul knows them. You feel it in the depth of your being, as if a long-lost part of you has returned. Who these beings are depends entirely on you, your frequency, your life, your intentions, struggles, and spiritual growth. You don't get a generic welcoming party. You are received by a cast of consciousness that has traveled with you across time, sometimes as friends, sometimes as family, sometimes as quiet observers who held space for you during your darkest nights. Some may have left the physical world years ago, their passing wrapped in grief and mystery. Others may be spiritual entities that have never incarnated on earth at all, but who have walked beside you, whispering wisdom into your intuition, even when you didn't know how to listen. This is not fiction. Cayce's readings, often done for grieving families desperate to understand what had become of their departed loved ones, described in vivid detail how the soul never emerged into the next world alone. He explained how certain souls would pause between lifetimes, choosing to remain in the spiritual realms for the purpose of helping others make that transition, not because they were commanded to, but because love doesn't end with death, it expands. Sometimes he described entire groups of souls waiting to welcome a single spirit. These weren't ghosts or lost entities. They were companions, guides, kindred intelligences, waiting at the threshold to ensure that the passing was filled with peace rather than fear. They helped stabilize the energy of the newly released soul, creating a container of safety during the most radical shift in awareness one can experience it. What's even more profound is how Cayce described the intelligence behind this process. None of it is random. It's not based on chance. It's not a spiritual lottery. The beings who show up are there because of divine order, a sacred orchestration rooted in your soul's eternal contracts. Before you were born, you chose certain experiences. You formed agreements with other souls. Some agreed to be your teachers, some your lovers, some your enemies, and some, quietly, agreed to go ahead of you, so they could meet you when it was your time. Can you imagine that? That someone who loved you so deeply made a soul-level promise to be there when you passed, not just in thought, but in presence, in consciousness, to hold you, guide you, and walk you home? This is why the concept of soul families is so central in Cayce's work. You aren't a lone spark wandering through a cold universe. You are part of a vast constellation of souls, evolving, remembering, returning. You travel in circles of connection, lifetimes layered upon lifetimes, all braided together through the energetic bond of shared growth. In this view, even the ones who hurt you, the ones you couldn't forgive, may be there in that moment, not to cause harm, but to offer reconciliation beyond the boundaries of time, because in the afterlife, all things bend toward healing, all things bend toward light. You may wonder how this happens. Do these beings simply appear? Do you see them with eyes? Do you hear them speak? According to Cayce, communication in the afterlife is not bound by form. It's consciousness meeting consciousness. It's recognition without words. Sometimes it is experienced visually, a familiar face glowing with peace. Sometimes it's a sensation, like being enveloped in a presence you forgot you missed. And sometimes it's simply knowing, as if their thoughts and yours merge into a single awareness. And no matter how the experience unfolds, one element is always present: love. Not the sentimental love that flickers in and out of relationships, but the deep eternal kind. The love that sees your soul exactly as it is, without judgment, without expectation, without fear. The love that says, you made it, you're safe, you're home. Cayce explained that many souls report their first moments after death as being filled with astonishment. Not because they were dead, but because they felt more alive than ever. There is a lightness, a clarity, a sense of peace that surpasses anything known in the physical realm. And that peace, in large part, comes from the presence of these spiritual companions. They don't push you. They don't preach. They simply stand with you, a reminder that everything you thought you lost is not gone, only transformed. This sacred welcoming holds immense meaning for how you live now, because if no soul crosses alone, then you must also understand you've never been alone here either. Those same presences who will meet you then are with you now, whispering in your intuition, guiding you through dreams, sitting beside you in moments of grief when no one else knew what to say. They have always been here. And when you begin to live your life with that awareness, that connection, everything begins to change. You stop fearing death. You stop feeling so isolated. You begin to realize that your path has been lined with invisible companions every step of the way. And when the time comes for you to take your final step out of this world, you will be met not by strangers, not by judges, but by souls who love you more than you can possibly imagine. So no, you won't drift off into the void. You'll be received, not because you earned it, but because it was always promised. In the unseen realms beyond death, there is no randomness, no accidents, no arbitrary assignments of who meets you in that sacred moment when the soul breaks free from the body. What unfolds in those first few breaths of eternity is the purest reflection of something you've been crafting every moment of your life, your vibration. Edgar Cayce spoke of this not as metaphor, but as law, a spiritual law so precise, so intimate, that it weaves together the frequency of your soul and the very nature of the beings who come to welcome you home. He called it the vibrational law of attraction, a force that governs not just manifestation here on earth, but also the unseen choreography of the afterlife. In this law, like attracts like, vibration calls to vibration, and when your soul steps beyond the veil, it is magnetically drawn to and met by energies that mirror your own. You see, your vibration isn't just a fleeting mood or a passing emotion, it is the sum total of your consciousness in motion. The energetic echo of your thoughts, beliefs, intentions, and choices. It's the resonance of your soul, shaped over lifetimes, but most powerfully in the way you choose to show up here and now. Every act of compassion, every moment of truth, every time you moved from love instead of fear, it added light to your field. Every grudge, every judgment, every unhealed wound, it left an imprint too. And while no vibration is inherently bad, each carries a signature, and that signature determines alignment. When the soul transitions from the physical to the non-physical, it doesn't suddenly become someone else. It becomes more of what it already was. And in that expansion, it naturally harmonizes with other beings whose energetic frequency matches its own. That's why some souls report being greeted by familiar faces, loving ancestors, close friends, cherished pets, while others encounter luminous beings of light, angelic presences, or even ancient guides they've never seen before but instantly recognize with unexplainable familiarity. Cayce described it as a cosmic sorting, but not in the way we're used to thinking about sorting. It's not hierarchical, it's harmonic. Just as two tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency begin to resonate together, so too do souls attract companions whose energies complement or reflect their own. The afterlife doesn't assign these welcomers based on merit, religion, or external achievement. It responds to frequency, and your frequency is yours alone. Think of it like this: if your soul vibrates at the frequency of peace, you will naturally align with presences who are peace, not who know peace, but who radiate it. If your life was a song of forgiveness, you will be met by those whose essence carries that same melody. If you carried love in your heart, even in your hardest moments, love will be what surrounds you when you cross over. And if you lived in anger or fear, you may initially meet energies that reflect those vibrations too, not to punish, but to mirror, to help you see yourself clearly, because clarity is the first light of transformation. Cayce was careful to emphasize that this law is not about worthiness, it's not about reward or punishment. It's not a moral scale, it's resonance. Just as water flows toward stillness, energy flows toward its natural frequency match. And in the afterlife, there is no way to hide who you are. You don't wear masks there. You are your frequency. That's the truth most people run from in life, and yet it's the very truth that frees you in death. This is why some souls describe being greeted by angelic beings they never consciously believed in during life. Because belief isn't what creates alignment, vibration is. These beings of light do not discriminate by doctrine. They respond to the soul's openness, its readiness, its love. Cayce described them as radiant, often beyond language, but instantly recognizable by the soul as part of its own higher journey. Their presence is not forced, it's invited, magnetically, spiritually, through the law of vibration. The soul doesn't earn them, it becomes receptive to them. Others, whose vibration has been shaped more by material attachments, fear, or trauma, may find themselves greeted by energies that feel more muted, more familiar to the earthly realm. These are not lesser beings. They are simply aligned to where that soul is, and perfectly suited to help it take the next step forward. Even those who have harmed others or who lived in deep confusion are not cast aside. They too are met, but by energies that help them begin the slow, sacred process of unlearning, of remembering, of healing. Because again, there is no abandonment in this process, only alignment. And this law of vibrational welcome doesn't just determine who greets you, it determines how you perceive that greeting. Two souls may both be met by the same presence, but one may see a mother, the other an angel, and another a wave of light. What you are is what you see. Cayce taught that perception in the afterlife is inseparable from resonance. You don't look at something, you merge with it. You feel the being before you as yourself reflected back to you, and in that reflection you begin to remember the parts of you that had long gone silent in the noise of earthly life. And this, perhaps, is the greatest gift of the vibrational law. It doesn't just greet you with familiar souls, it holds a mirror to your own. You see the life you lived not through judgment but through resonance. You feel the truth of your choices. You experience the echo of every moment, not to suffer but to understand. And the beings around you are there not to explain but to be, to stand as embodiments of the consciousness you've cultivated. They don't tell you what comes next. They help you feel what you've become. And if you don't like what you feel, if there is pain, regret, or confusion, you're not punished for it. You're simply shown where you still hold density and you're offered the chance to heal. These beings are welcomers, are reflections, guides, sacred companions. Some have walked with you for lifetimes. Others were strangers you passed once in a moment of grace. And that single moment created a bond that carried across the veil. Because connection too is vibrational, and every act of love creates a thread that transcends time. In this way, death is not a random event. It's a vibrational culmination. And who meets you at that moment is not a surprise, it's a revelation. It reveals what your soul has been tuning itself toward all along. So, if you've ever wondered who will greet you when you die, the answer is simple. Those who resonate with you. Those whose presence your soul already recognizes, and the version of yourself that will be doing the seeing, that version will be clearer, more honest, and more free than anything you've ever known here. Which means, you don't have to wait for death to begin tuning your frequency. You can begin now, with your choices, with your thoughts, with the vibration you carry in your heart. Because the greeting you'll receive at the end of this life is not based on what you believed, it's based on what you became. When the soul steps across the veil, there is often an unmistakable moment, not of confusion, not of fear, but of recognition. A face appears, or perhaps a voice calls out from what feels like nowhere and everywhere all at once. It might be your mother, who left this world decades ago but never stopped being with you. It might be a child, taken far too soon, now glowing with light and ageless wisdom. Or maybe it's a beloved pet, bounding toward you, tail wagging as if time had never touched your bond. In that instant something profound happens. You remember. You remember that love does not die. It transcends time, space, and form. And in that remembrance, the entire meaning of life and death begins to shift. According to Edgar Cayce's readings, the first presence most souls encounter upon crossing over is not some abstract spirit guide or celestial being. It's someone familiar, someone loved, someone known. These initial greeters are not there by coincidence. Their appearance is no accident. They are the ones whose energy is most intimately woven into yours, whose essence has left the deepest imprint on your soul. And in that sacred reunion, the fear of death dissolves. Why does this happen? Why are these familiar faces the ones who show up first? The answer lies in something far more powerful than memory. It lies in frequency, in what Cayce referred to as energetic imprinting. Every relationship you've ever formed carries a unique vibrational signature. When you love someone deeply, your energy fields become intertwined, not just emotionally but spiritually. This imprint, this energetic bond, survives death. It survives the loss of the physical body. It lives in the field of consciousness, in what mystics call the subtle body or the causal plane. It is timeless, and it is unbreakable. Think of it like a melody. When you connect with someone soul to soul, a song is created, a frequency unique to your connection. And that song continues to play, even when one of you crosses over. When you die, your soul listens for the songs it already knows, the ones that have brought it comfort, safety, joy. And those beings, those beloved companions, hear your soul's music too. They come to meet you in that resonance. This is why, for so many people who have had near-death experiences, the accounts are strikingly similar. They speak of seeing their grandmother waiting at the end of a corridor of light, or a husband who died years earlier standing there, hands outstretched, with tears of love in his eyes. Some speak of pets they hadn't seen in decades, dogs, cats, horses, approaching them with the same spirit and devotion they remembered in life. These aren't hallucinations, they're harmonies. Consciousness meeting consciousness, vibrating on a shared frequency of unconditional love. Cayce emphasized that these meetings serve a greater purpose than simple comfort. These loved ones act as spiritual midwives. Their presence helps the transitioning souls stabilize. Imagine waking up from a dream so vivid, so immersive, that you momentarily forget who you really are. In that moment, what you need most isn't new information. It's a familiar presence, something, someone, to help you remember. That's what these beings provide. They remind you of your essence through the most powerful mirror available, love. And this love is not limited to family in the traditional sense. Sometimes the most powerful bonds come from souls you've only known briefly in this life, but with whom you've shared lifetimes before. A friend who always understood you, even when words weren't exchanged. A teacher whose influence changed the entire direction of your life. A romantic partner whose connection to you felt otherworldly, as if you had found each other again after centuries apart. These are your soulmates, your kindred spirits, and they too often come first. Because love isn't measured by time, it's measured by resonance. There are people you've known for years who have barely touched your soul, and there are others you met only once, yet they live in you still. The soul recognizes depth, not duration, and in the afterlife, it is depth that draws your greeters close. One of the most profound truths that Cayce revealed is that the bonds of love are not limited to the human. Animals too carry spiritual intelligence. They love without condition. They forgive without hesitation. And in many cases their energy is among the purest you'll ever encounter. When a beloved pet dies, the grief can feel bottomless, because the connection was never clouded by ego or expectation, just presence, just being. And so when you transition, those same beings, those furry companions who sat with you in your pain and celebrated with you in joy, may be among the first to meet you. These reunions are not sentimental, they're sacred. Each being you encounter holds a piece of your truth. They remind you of the love you gave and received. They mirror your capacity to connect. They are proof that the life you lived mattered, that it left echoes, that it was real. And in their presence, the soul begins to relax into its true shape. Not the role it played, not the wounds it carried, but the light it always was underneath it all. Sometimes souls encounter loved ones they didn't know had passed. In those moments there is surprise, yes, but also deep knowing. A brother you lost contact with, a father you never met in life, even ancestors from generations past whose faces you've only seen in black and white photographs. They may come forward, not as strangers but as sacred lineage, as reminders that your existence was never isolated, or that you came from something greater. And then there are the souls who show up unexpectedly. Someone you barely knew, someone whose presence in your life was brief but meaningful, a nurse who held your hand during a vulnerable moment, a stranger who helped you on a difficult day, even someone with whom you had tension or unfinished business. If the emotional charge between you was strong, they may come forward, not in conflict, but in clarity, in forgiveness, in healing. This is the hidden beauty of the afterlife. Everything bends toward love, toward wholeness, toward return. And the souls who meet you first are the ones your heart remembers most clearly, not just because of how they made you feel, but because of how they helped you remember who you are. In life, we often think we've lost people. We mourn, we ache, we hold on to photos, letters, items they once touched. But Cayce's teachings remind us that the connection never leaves. It simply changes form. The soul remains whole, conscious, and woven into the fabric of your own becoming. And when the time comes when your soul steps into the light, those bonds will guide you home. You won't need to find them. They will already be there. ChatGPT said, "Beyond the embrace of familiar faces, there comes a presence unlike anything you've known in this world. It arrives not with form or name, not with words or gestures, but as a feeling, immediate, expansive, overwhelming in its stillness and power. It is light, but not the kind you see with your eyes. It is presence, but not the kind that casts a shadow. These are the light beings, and when your soul has reached a certain threshold of spiritual development, it is they who come to greet you. Edgar Cayce described these luminous presences with a kind of reverent awe. They are not merely symbolic, nor are they projections of the mind. They are real, they are conscious, and they exist on a vibrational plane so pure, so attuned to love and wisdom, that the soul instinctively recognizes them, even if it has no name for them. These are the angelic ones, the guides who have walked beside you across lifetime, the ascended masters who embody divine intelligence. They are the soul's oldest companions and its future self reflected in radiant clarity. Their appearance is not random. Not all souls experience their presence immediately. It is not about hierarchy or reward. It is resonance, as all things are in the afterlife. The more a soul has cultivated alignment with truth, love, and service during its earthly life, the more its vibration begins to harmonize with these higher frequencies. And when the soul reaches that level, it naturally draws them forth. To be in their presence is to experience the closest thing to pure love that a soul can endure. Not the love that wants, that clings, that seeks validation, but the love that simply is. Unwavering, unconditional, beyond comprehension. Cayce described the soul's initial encounter with these beings as often overwhelming, not because they are frightening, but because they are familiar in a way you didn't know you were missing. The soul remembers them, not from this life, but from the long journey through the cycles of existence. They are the guardians of memory, the keepers of wisdom, and when they come to meet you, they do so not just to welcome you, but to reveal to you who you have always been. There is no fear in their presence, only surrender. You don't need to explain yourself, they already know. Not the version of you that was shaped by pain, ego, or survival, but the deeper you. The you that kept growing, even through loss. The you that chose to forgive, even when it was hard. The you that searched for meaning when the world went silent. That vibration, that steady unfolding of your soul, is what calls them. Some experience these beings as figures, tall, radiant forms that shimmer with soft light. Others see them as indistinct fields of color and energy. Sometimes they appear robed in flowing garments, wings or no wings, eyes that seem to look straight into the soul's center. But often there is no form at all. There is only presence. A field of consciousness so vast and intimate that your awareness blends into it like a drop of water into the ocean. And in that merging, something sacred happens. The illusions begin to fall away. In the presence of the light beings, the stories you've carried begin to dissolve. The shame, the guilt, the smallness, the roles you played, the names you wore, the masks you thought were necessary, they fall, and beneath it all is you. Not the you the world saw, but the you the universe has always known. The eternal witness, the light within the form. These beings do not judge. They do not weigh your actions against a cosmic ledger. They do not impose conditions. What they offer is reflection. In their presence you begin to see yourself through their eyes, not as broken or flawed, but as becoming, evolving, sacred. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every wound becomes a doorway. Every fear becomes something to be embraced, understood, and eventually released. Many have asked, who are these beings? Are they angels in the biblical sense? Are they extraterrestrial intelligences? Are they aspects of our higher self? Cayce did not pin them down to one definition, because in truth they are more than any definition can hold. They are consciousness manifested in service. They are intelligence in its most compassionate form. They are what we become when we no longer need to learn through suffering, but through love. Some are personal guides, companions who have walked with you for lifetimes, assigned not by command but by choice, out of love, out of a soul-level commitment to help you evolve. These are the quiet voices that whispered in your intuition when logic failed you, the dreams that stirred you awake in the middle of the night with answers you didn't know you needed, the invisible arms that held you in moments of despair, and they have always been with you, but in death their presence becomes unmistakable. Others are what Cayce called ascended souls, beings who once incarnated on earth but have moved beyond the wheel of birth and death. They have become masters not by escaping the human experience, but by fully inhabiting it and choosing love again and again. Think of them as graduates of the human condition, now offering their presence as a map for those still traveling. They come when the soul is ready to remember its own mastery. And then there are the angelic realms, beings so luminous, so vast, that to encounter them is to feel yourself expand beyond individuality. They are not human in form, yet they understand humanity at its deepest core. They carry the essence of divine will, divine love, divine order. In many traditions, these beings are called seraphim, archangels, Elohim. But again, the names are not the point. The presence is, and that presence is unmistakable. You may wonder, what do they say? What do they do? Often, they say nothing. Their communication is not in words, it's in transmission, in vibration. Being near them shifts you. Their love teaches you. Their stillness reveals your truth. There is no need for explanation, because everything is understood. There is no hiding, because there is no shame. There is no fear, because there is nothing to fear. They don't come to take you somewhere. They come to remind you of where you are and who you've always been. And that remembrance, that sacred mirror, is the beginning of a deeper journey, because after the welcoming, after the joy of reunion, the soul continues, and the presence of these light beings becomes a compass. They help orient the soul toward the next step in its evolution, whether that be rest, reflection, new assignments in the spiritual realms, or a return to physical incarnation. They walk with you. Their love does not fade when the greeting is over. They remain, always, not because you need them, but because they chose you. And in time, as your own light expands, you begin to realize something extraordinary, that you too are becoming one of them, that you are not separate, that their light is your light, that the distance between human and divine was only ever a perception. And when that realization lands not in your mind but in your being, something sacred unfolds. You stop looking outward for heaven. You begin to remember that it has always lived inside of you. There are reunions after death that feel like coming home. Gentle embraces, tearful recognitions, love wrapped in light. But not every greeting comes in the form of comfort. Some are unexpected. Some shake you at your core. Because occasionally, standing at the threshold, waiting for you in that in-between space, is someone you never thought you'd see again. Someone who caused you pain. Someone who broke your heart. Someone whose presence carries a story unresolved. And yet, there they are. You might feel a jolt, a recoil, even confusion. Why would this person be here? Why now? Why after everything? But in the world beyond the physical, nothing is ever what it seems, and no encounter, especially after death, is accidental. Edgar Cayce's readings revealed something many struggled to accept. Those who harmed us in life may still be bonded to us in death. Not because justice wasn't served, not because we're being punished, but because the soul longs for wholeness. And unfinished business is not a curse, it's a call to understand, to resolve, to release. Cayce explained that the soul operates within the universal laws of balance and vibration. Karma, in its truest form, is not retribution. It's restoration. It's the soul's journey back to equilibrium. When energy between two beings becomes distorted through pain, betrayal, or misunderstanding, that energy remains unresolved until it is brought into harmony. This is why people who caused harm, or were harmed by us, sometimes appear in the moments after death. They are not here to wound again. They are here because your soul and theirs still have threads that haven't been untangled. And in the afterlife, without the masks of ego, without the defenses of personality, the soul sees more clearly. It remembers the contracts made long before birth. It recalls that what seemed like cruelty in life may have roots in shared soul lessons, lessons that weren't yet completed. These encounters, difficult as they may be, are sacred invitations to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper weave of your shared history. Imagine for a moment that someone who deeply betrayed you in life appears in the light after you've crossed over. Not with arrogance, not with denial, but with eyes full of sorrow, with an openness that they never had in life. You feel their energy. Not the wounded reactive version you once knew, but their essence. The part of them that struggled to love because they never knew how. The part that was trapped in pain And now, standing soul to soul, you feel their remorse. You feel their longing for your forgiveness. Not for their peace, but for yours. These moments are not forced. They arise organically through resonance. The souls that still carry karmic threads to you are drawn forward, not to repeat the past, but to redeem it. And you are given a choice, not to forget what happened, but to view it through the eyes of the soul, rather than the wounds of the body. This is not easy. Some pain runs so deep that even in the afterlife it takes time to unravel. But in that space of higher awareness, you begin to feel things differently. You see that the one who hurt you was not the villain. They were the lesson. They were the mirror. They were the echo of something unfinished between you both. And now, stripped of story, stripped of form, that energy can finally be transformed. Cayce spoke of karmic welcomers not as intrusions, but as sacred teachers. They are the ones who show up because the soul is ready to heal, ready to see the full arc of a relationship that may have spanned lifetimes. Often these beings are as surprised to be there as you are. Many don't expect forgiveness. Some still carry their own guilt, their own wounds. But in the spiritual realm, the only currency is truth, and truth has a way of softening even the most hardened souls. Sometimes you're the one who appears to someone else, someone you hurt without meaning to, someone you didn't understand. In that moment, the roles shift. You become the karmic welcomer, and you realize how deeply all things are connected, every action, every word, every withheld truth. The soul sees it all, not to condemn, but to integrate. You finally understand the ripple of your own presence and the responsibility that comes with being a conscious being. But perhaps most beautiful is this. In the afterlife, healing doesn't require perfection. You don't have to get it all right. You simply have to be willing to witness, willing to feel, willing to see the other not as the story of what they did, but as the soul who, just like you, is learning how to love. This is not about bypassing pain or forcing peace. Some wounds may not be ready for resolution right away, and that's okay. The spiritual realm honors timing. Healing is not rushed. Sometimes the encounter is brief, a glance, a gesture, a moment of eye contact that says, "I see you now." And that may be enough to release lifetimes of weight. Other times the reunion is longer. You may share memories. You may communicate without words, through feelings, images, understanding that pours into you like sunlight. You may discover that the one you resented the most was, in fact, one of your closest soul allies, a being who agreed to play the difficult role so that you could awaken, and maybe you did the same for them. This is the mystery of karmic love. It's not always sweet. It's not always gentle. But it is always designed to bring the soul back to itself. Even the people you can't forgive in life may become the ones you embrace in the afterlife. Not because they deserve it, but because you are ready. Because the weight of carrying the wound is heavier than the cost of letting it go. And when you do let it go, when the energy is finally freed, something remarkable happens. The space that pain once occupied fills with light. You feel lighter. You feel expanded. You feel whole in a way that no justice, no revenge, no external closure could have ever given you. That's the real freedom. That's the real healing. So if you've ever wondered why certain people won't leave your thoughts, why certain wounds keep surfacing, why some stories still feel unresolved, it may be because your soul is preparing, not to relive the pain, but to complete the cycle, to rewrite the ending. And when your time comes, when you step through that final veil, don't be afraid if someone appears that you didn't expect. Look beyond the face, feel beyond the past. You may just find that the one you feared most is the one who helps you remember your own power to heal, to forgive, and to be free. Because even in the afterlife, love is the final answer, and every soul, even the ones that hurt you, is trying, in their own way, to return to it. There's a hidden architecture to your life, one that can't be seen with the physical eyes, yet its influence shapes everything. Who you meet, who you lose, who breaks your heart and who pieces it back together. It's not fate in the rigid sense, nor is it random chance. It's soul design, the intricate pattern of agreements made long before your birth, in a place where time does not exist, and only intention matters. And within that divine pattern, one truth stands clear: you are not walking this path alone. Edgar Cayce, in his deep trance readings, often spoke of the soul's journey as one that weaves through many lifetimes, and rarely, if ever, does a soul travel alone. You are part of a soul family, a group of beings that have journeyed with you across lifetimes, playing different roles each time, helping one another grow, evolve, and remember the truth of who you are. Sometimes they come into your life as lovers, parents, children, or best friends. Other times they appear as rivals, antagonists, or strangers, whose brief presence leaves an impact you can't explain. But always, they are connected to you through a shared spiritual signature, one that transcends bloodlines and lifetimes. These soul families are formed by resonance. Your soul's frequency harmonizes with theirs, creating a kind of gravitational pull across time and space. The connections are not always smooth or easy. In fact, the deepest soul contracts often involve the greatest challenges. Why? Because the purpose is growth. The soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks expansion, and expansion often comes through contrast, through the friction that awakens hidden aspects of the self. Before you were born into this life, your soul sat with these familiar companions, reviewing the journey ahead, setting intentions, choosing the broad strokes of your incarnation, who you would meet, what lessons would emerge, which souls would arrive for a moment and which would stay for decades. In that sacred space beyond the veil, agreements were made. Not contracts in the human sense, but spiritual commitments, acts of divine devotion between souls. Some of these souls agreed to cross your path for joy, others to help you face sorrow. And then there are those rare and beautiful ones who agreed to leave their physical forms before you, not as a loss, but as a preparation. These are the ones who chose to pass first, so they could be waiting for you when it's your time. Their exit was not a mistake. It was a calling, a decision made from a place of love so deep, so selfless, that your human heart may not fully grasp it until you meet them again. It might be a child who passed young, a parent who died before you could grow close, a sibling who left before you had time to say goodbye. Their departure shattered your world, but on a soul level, it was always known. Not because you deserved pain, but because they had another role to play, to become part of your spiritual welcoming team, to stand at the veil when your final breath is taken and say, "I've been waiting. I told you I wouldn't let you do this alone." And you'll remember. In that moment beyond death, all the pain dissolves and the deeper knowing rushes back. You'll remember the conversation you had before this life began, the embrace, the agreement, the promise. Cayce's readings offer glimpses into this divine orchestration, souls choosing lifetimes together like actors selecting roles in a sacred drama. You may have been a mother in one life and a son in the next, a teacher once, a student later. And while the forms change, the love remains. Even the souls who hurt you now may have once been the ones who saved you. It's not about punishment or reward, it's about evolution, and every role is necessary. Sometimes, a soul agrees to play the part of the villain so that you can remember your strength. Other times, they agree to leave early, knowing that their absence will awaken something dormant inside of you. A sense of purpose, a calling, a deeper relationship with the unseen. From the human perspective, this can feel cruel, but from the soul's view, it's the highest form of service. A choice made not for self, but for the greater journey of both. Your soul family doesn't only consist of people in your current life. Some of them are in other dimensions now, watching, guiding, influencing events in subtle ways. They may visit you in dreams, or in those strange moments of déjà vu that make no logical sense but feel undeniably familiar. They show up in signs, in synchronicities, in the books that fall into your lap at the right moment, or the strangers who speak a sentence that shifts your entire perception. You've felt them. You may not have known how to name them, but their presence has lingered. In moments when you've broken down and felt comfort without reason, in the quiet after prayer, in the unspoken sense that someone was with you even when no one else was. That's your soul family. And some of them are already preparing to welcome you when the time comes. There is nothing morbid in this. It is not about longing for death, but about recognizing that death is simply a door, and on the other side of that door are the souls who loved you enough to step through it first, to prepare the way, to anchor the space in light so that when you arrive you are not afraid. Imagine that. Imagine transitioning out of your body and, instead of silence, being met with laughter, with arms that held you once in life and have waited patiently to hold you again, with a pet that curls around your feet like no time has passed, with a presence that says without speaking, "You made it. We've been waiting." There is no loneliness in death, not for the soul, only reunion, only remembering. And when you do remember, when you feel the threads of your soul family pulling you into that greater embrace, you'll realize something astonishing. They've been guiding you all along. Every challenge, every miracle, every tear that brought you to your knees. It was part of a pattern, and woven into that pattern were the hands of those you've always known. So live this life, knowing that the people who matter most are not gone. They are ahead of you waiting with love. And some, still here beside you, are parts of the same eternal circle. Every encounter matters. Every connection is sacred, because in the end, death doesn't separate soul families. It simply brings them back together. There is a moment, just after the soul loosens from the body, when everything familiar begins to shift. The boundaries of time dissolve, the physical senses go silent, the ego no longer drives perception, you are not dreaming, and yet the rules of waking life no longer apply. This is the crossing, the sacred passage between worlds. And while it may feel like uncharted territory to you, there are beings who know this space intimately, souls who have walked it countless times, who have chosen, out of love, wisdom, and service, to stand at the veil and guide others through. These are the guardians of passage. Edgar Cayce described them as advanced souls, not bound to the cycles of reincarnation unless they choose to return. They are not simply guides or spirits passing through. They are specialists in transition, masters of the in-between, beings whose very purpose is to help newly departed souls orient themselves, stabilize their energy, and gently awaken into the expanded state of consciousness that comes after death. They are not appointed, they are not assigned. They choose this work because they have transcended the need for personal evolution, and now exist in service to the evolution of others. Their presence may not be immediately recognized in the traditional sense. They don't always appear as familiar faces, and they may not speak in words. Their role is subtle but profound. You feel them more than you see them. They become a kind of inner current, a silent resonance that steadies your awareness when everything else feels unknown. And that steadiness is vital. Because death, while natural, is an enormous vibrational shift. The soul is suddenly unbound, expansive, sensitive. Everything is energy, thought creates form, feeling becomes movement. There are no lies, no masks, just consciousness in its rawest state. Without guidance, that shift can be disorienting, especially for souls who died suddenly, violently, or while in fear. The guardians of passage hold space for those souls to breathe, even when there is no breath, to center, even when there is no body. They serve as translators of spiritual law, not through lecture or command, but through energetic transmission. Their very presence communicates the new reality, that fear is no longer necessary, that you are not being judged, that nothing is lost, only transformed. These guardians are not there to explain everything all at once. That would overwhelm the soul. Instead, they unfold the truth gradually, like the petals of a flower opening to light. They walk beside you, not ahead of you. They match your pace. They offer understanding in doses your consciousness can absorb. If you are confused, they do not fix you. They create the conditions for clarity to arise from within. Because in the afterlife, learning is not imposed, it is remembered. Sometimes, a guardian of passage takes on a distinct form, not because they need it, but because you do. If your belief system expects an angel, they may appear as one. If your mind finds comfort in the image of a wise elder, they may take that shape. But these forms are not fixed. They are symbolic bridges, created to help your soul transition gently from the known to the unknown. Once you no longer need the form, they reveal more of their true nature, which is luminous, vast, and deeply familiar in a way that words can't fully express. You may even come to realize that you've known them before, not from this life, but from between lifetimes. These guardians often serve the same souls again and again, across incarnations, forming a bond that transcends earthly relationships. They were with you when you entered this world. They will be with you when you leave it. And their love is not conditioned on your success or your choices. It is constant, steady, pure. They are the ones who help you navigate the first glimpses of the life review, not with judgment but with presence. They hold space as your soul witnesses the impact of its actions, the ripple effect of every word and deed. They help you see through the eyes of compassion, not shame. They offer no condemnation because they understand something the human mind often forgets. Every soul is learning, and learning requires imperfection. Some of these guardians once lived on Earth. They understand human pain, confusion, and longing. Others have never incarnated. They exist purely as spiritual intelligences. And yet, regardless of origin, their essence is the same. Love expressed as guidance. Wisdom expressed as stillness. They do not seek to control or direct. They are simply there, unwavering, patient, attuned. For souls who fear death, these beings are especially important. Fear creates energetic turbulence. It can distort perception, causing the soul to cling to remnants of the physical world or resist its natural transition. The guardians of passage gently dissolve that fear, not by arguing with it, but by being a presence so peaceful, so reassuring, that fear begins to dissolve on its own. They are like a lighthouse in the fog, a constant beacon that says, "You are safe, you are seen, you are guided." And while they do help souls let go of earthly attachments, they never force detachment. They understand the complexity of love, the ache of leaving, the grief that still lingers in those left behind. They honor it all. They honor the bonds you carry and the roles you held. They know that some part of you still wonders if you said enough, did enough, loved enough, and they respond with a presence that answers every doubt without words. They help you feel the truth that nothing real is ever lost, that love is the only thing that survives the crossing completely intact. In time, as your soul begins to stabilize in this new state of being, the role of the guardians may begin to fade, not because they are gone, but because their purpose shifts. They remain available, always, but they step back so that you can step forward, into your next level of learning, into your own healing, into whatever your soul chooses next, whether that's rest, reunion, exploration of higher dimensions, or even preparation for another life. And in some cases, for those who have walked a long path of service and remembrance, there comes an extraordinary choice. The opportunity to become a guardian of passage, yourself, to offer to others what was once offered to you. Because every soul that evolves becomes more capable of holding space for others. And so the cycle continues. Love meeting the newly awakened, guiding, supporting, reflecting, until one day, the soul you once were now stands at the veil holding the light for someone else. This is the deeper truth behind every story of the afterlife. It's not a place of endings, it's a place of sacred continuums, of souls arriving and being met, of love expressing itself in forms both familiar and transcendent. And at the center of that unfolding, always, are the guardians, quiet, powerful, compassionate, waiting not with answers, but with presence, waiting not to direct you, but to remind you that you were never lost. So when your time comes, when the breath leaves your body and the veil begins to lift, you will not be alone. You will not be confused. You will feel a calm that seems to come from nowhere, but it is not nowhere. It is them, holding space, holding light. And in that stillness you will remember, not just who you were, but who you have always been. At the moment of death, everything becomes magnified, every thought, every emotion, every lingering belief takes on a new weight. Not because you're being judged, but because in that instant your consciousness is no longer filtered through the dense layers of the physical body. You are now awareness itself, exposed, expansive, sensitive and wide open to the vibration you are holding in your final breath. Edgar Cayce taught that how you die, not just the circumstances but your state of mind and heart in that last moment, shapes the doorway you step through. It doesn't determine your eternal destiny, but it absolutely colors the first few steps of your afterlife journey. Imagine death not as a wall you slam into, but as a threshold you cross. And what you carry with you as you step across it doesn't stay behind. Your emotional and mental vibration, what you are feeling, believing, resisting, or accepting, acts like a filter through which the afterlife begins to unfold. This is why two people can die in the same moment, even in the same physical location, and yet have radically different initial afterlife experiences. One may step into a realm of warmth, light, and clarity, greeted immediately by loving presences and a deep sense of calm. The other may find themselves in a foggy, dreamlike space, confused, disoriented, clinging to the illusion that they are still alive in the material world. The difference isn't punishment, it's perception, and perception is shaped by the soul's vibrational state. Cayce emphasized this again and again. The state of consciousness at death is the seed of your immediate post-death reality. If you cross over in peace, you expand into clarity. If you cross over in fear, denial, or anger, your energy field may initially cloud your vision, making it harder to perceive the love that is waiting for you. But this is vital to understand. Every soul is embraced. No matter how you die, no matter what confusion or chaos you bring with you, you are never abandoned. The love that meets you is patient beyond measure. If your death was traumatic, sudden, or filled with unresolved emotion, the spiritual realms respond with gentleness, not judgment. The more distressed your energy, the more stabilizing forces are sent to surround you. Some souls, especially those who die violently or unexpectedly, may not even realize they've died. They cling to the edges of their previous reality, looping through the final moments, unable or unwilling to accept what has happened. But even then, they are not alone. The guardians, the soul companions, the light beings, they wait. They wait at the edges of the soul's resistance, sending signals of love, calling gently without force, and eventually, always, the soul begins to hear. You may wonder, how can fear have such an impact in a place of pure spirit? Because fear is dense. It contracts awareness, it narrows vision. Even in the non-physical, fear can act like a fog, distorting what's actually there. You might be surrounded by light, but if you are gripped by shame or terror, you won't see it, you won't feel it. You'll remain in a self-created echo of your last thoughts. But that fog is never permanent. The soul is naturally drawn toward healing, toward truth, toward the light. And as that fear begins to soften, even slightly, the greater reality begins to shine through. A familiar presence, a feeling of warmth, a voice that says, "It's okay now." And in that softening, the soul's vision expands. On the other hand, when a soul crosses over in peace, with a heart that is open with acceptance of what is unfolding, the transition is often breathtakingly beautiful. There is no fear, only surrender, and that surrender allows the soul to immediately perceive the higher realms with clarity and depth. The veil lifts gently. The greeters arrive instantly. The expansion feels natural, like waking up from a long and heavy sleep. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect at the moment of death. Peace doesn't mean the absence of all emotion. It doesn't mean you feel no sadness or uncertainty. It means you are allowing. You are not resisting what is happening. You are not clinging to the body or to identity or to what could have been. You are letting go, not into darkness, but into trust. Into the unknown, yes, but with a deep inner knowing that the unknown is not your enemy. And that knowing, that vibration of surrender, becomes the light that guides you. Cayce described the transition of peaceful souls as effortless entry. These souls are met almost immediately by loved ones, soul companions or beings of light. They move easily through the borderlands and into the realms of rest, reflection, and reunion. They begin their life review not with dread, but with curiosity, with openness. Their perception is fluid, their memory accessible. They are not stuck in loops or confusion. They are awake, and they begin the next phase of their soul journey with clarity. This is why spiritual traditions across the world have emphasized the importance of dying consciously, of preparing for death not with dread but with reverence, of tending to your inner world while you're still alive, so that, when the time comes, your vibration is light enough to carry you gently across, not because the afterlife requires it, but because you deserve a transition rooted in peace. So, how can you begin preparing now? By becoming aware of your emotional patterns, by resolving what you can while you are here, by forgiving where you're able, by letting go of the stories that weigh down your spirit, by cultivating a relationship with the unseen, by spending time in silence, in nature, in connection with something greater than your current self. Every time you choose peace over panic, you are tuning your vibration. Every time you soften into compassion instead of judgment, you are lifting your frequency. These choices don't just affect your current life, they shape your crossing. They determine what you'll see when the body falls away. But here's the grace in it all. Even if you don't die in peace, even if your final breath is tangled with fear or regret, you are still held. There is no penalty, there is no condemnation. There is only love. waiting just beyond the veil of your perception, love that will wait as long as it takes. Love that doesn't require you to be ready, only willing. And when that willingness comes, even in the smallest flicker, everything begins to shift. The fog lifts, the fear fades, and the light rushes in, because the truth is this: death doesn't reveal who you should have been. It reveals who you've always been beneath the noise. And no matter how you die, whether in chaos or calm, alone or surrounded, what meets you on the other side is the part of you that has always been eternal, always been loved, always been seen. So breathe deeply into this life, love fully, forgive generously, and when the time comes, may your final breath carry the echo of trust, because the moment you step through, you will remember. You were never going to do this alone. There is a moment in the soul's journey after death when the noise quiets, the lights soften, and everything you've ever been begins to unfold before you, not as a punishment, not as a trial, but as a remembering. This is the life review, a panoramic immersion into the tapestry of your existence. And contrary to what some fear, it is not a courtroom. There is no gavel, no judge, no condemning jury waiting to weigh your worth. In Edgar Cayce's Revelations, the life review is not about shame or guilt. It is about awareness. It is about love, pure, penetrating, compassionate love that helps you see what you could not see while you were bound to time. As your soul settles into the realms beyond the body, the review does not begin with force. It begins with readiness. The life review is initiated by your own soul, as it begins to expand and return to its full memory. In life, we often walk in a kind of fog, focused on survival, identity, ego. We remember what we choose to, forget what hurts, and interpret moments through the lens of self-protection. But in death, the fog lifts, and what is revealed is not just what you did, but what you caused, what you radiated, what you gave, what you withheld, and most significantly, how it all felt, not just to you, but to everyone you touched. The miracle of the life review is this: you don't just recall the moments of your life, you relive them from the perspective of every person you ever impacted. That harsh word you said to a stranger, you feel it from within their body, their heart. That act of kindness you thought was small, you experience the warmth it brought to someone else's spirit even years later. The review is not a linear replay. It's a multi-dimensional immersion, like entering a living mosaic of your choices and their ripple effects. And in that sacred witnessing, understanding begins to dawn. Not the understanding of intellect, but the deep knowing of the soul. This is why Cayce described the review as more beautiful than terrifying, because while it can bring tears, it brings no punishment. There is no voice booming from above, no tally sheet of sins and virtues. There is only you, standing in the light of your own becoming, and around you the presence of being so loving, so accepting, that even your most painful memories become pathways to healing. They do not turn away from your shadow. They sit with it beside you, helping you hold it with compassion. They do not recoil when you feel regret. They lean in, because in the spiritual realm every wound is an invitation to grow. Many people fear this moment, believing it to be a divine sentencing, a last judgment from which there is no appeal. But Cayce shattered this belief with grace. He explained that the life review is not about reward or punishment. It is about integration. The soul, once freed from the distortions of fear and ego, simply wants to know. It wants to see. It wants to feel, to understand, to awaken, not to suffer, but to learn. And that learning in itself is liberation. Imagine being able to see your entire life from a higher vantage point, not from the wounds that drove your choices, but from the light that was always within you. You don't just see what happened. You begin to understand why. The motives, the fears, the unresolved pain that shaped your reactions, the generational trauma passed down without words, the moments you chose love when you could have chosen anger, and the moments you didn't, and what those taught you. It's all there, laid out with a clarity that is impossible to achieve while you are living within the density of the body. And yet, this clarity does not crush you, it frees you. Because finally the shame loses its grip. You stop running from your past. You stop clinging to your identity. You see your life as a beautiful, imperfect, evolving spiral of choices, some wise, some misguided, but all sacred, all necessary. The review reveals that you were never alone, even in your darkest hours, that even your failures carried within them seeds of wisdom, and that love, not perfection, was always the point. In some moments, the review is breathtaking. You will relive a time you offered help to someone in silence, with no one watching, and you will feel the magnitude of that kindness ripple across their life. You may have forgotten it entirely, but the soul does not forget. Nothing is lost. Every heartbeat, every whisper, every intention becomes part of the great field of memory, and when you see it again, you are moved by the beauty of your own hidden goodness. Other moments may bring sorrow, not because you are condemned, but because your soul has grown enough to finally feel the weight of choices that once felt justified. That time you chose anger over compassion, that relationship you abandoned out of fear, that lie you told to protect your ego. You will feel the echo of these choices not as punishment, but as resonance, and even in those moments the light around you does not dim. If anything, it grows brighter. Because your willingness to feel, to learn, to see, is a sign of your evolution. This is the essence of the life review. It is not final. It is formative. It does not close your story. It expands it. And what you learn during this sacred witnessing becomes the compass for your soul's next steps. You may choose to rest, to heal, to return, to serve. But whatever you choose, it will come from a place of deeper knowing, not of who you were, but of who you are now becoming. Cayce taught that the life review is deeply personal. No two are alike. Some unfold slowly over what feels like time, others happen in a flash, a flood of memory and insight so rapid that it's more like a download than a viewing. But in every case, the energy of love is constant, unconditional, non-judging. It holds space for everything you remember, every heartbreak, every triumph, every unspoken longing. There is no shame in this realm, because shame cannot exist where love is complete. So if you fear the moment when your life will be shown to you, know this: it will not be a moment of exposure, but of embrace. It will not be about your sins, but about your soul. And the beings who stand with you will not be critics, they will be companions, celebrating your growth, supporting your learning, reminding you gently that even your worst days contributed to your becoming. And perhaps the greatest gift of the life review is this: it allows you to forgive yourself. Truly, completely. You see the hurt you caused, and you see the pain that caused you to cause it. You see the love you withheld, and the fear that convinced you it was safer not to give it. And in that vast, open field of awareness, you are offered a choice. Not to forget, but to transform. Not to erase, but to evolve. Because this is the truth that Cayce echoed again and again: you are not here to be perfect, you are here to remember. And when your life flashes before your soul's eye, it will not be a test you must pass. It will be a mirror, showing you, finally, what love has been trying to show you all along. At first, there is silence. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but a vast, humming stillness that cradles you like the ocean. The body is gone. The breath has stopped. The heart no longer beats. And yet something inside you is impossibly present. Aware, awake, more alive than ever before. This is the moment when the illusion of death begins to dissolve. Edgar Cayce spoke of this revelation as one of the most extraordinary moments in the soul's journey, the realization that death, as we've been taught to fear it, simply doesn't exist, that it was always a transition, never an end. A doorway, not a destruction. The shedding of one layer of experience so a much deeper awareness could unfold. And when the soul settles, when the initial transition has softened into clarity, this truth becomes undeniable. You are not dead. You are more yourself than you have ever been. It's a strange paradox to describe, because from the physical perspective, everything associated with life has ended. Sight, sound, form, pulse, identity. But those things were never the source of your existence, they were only expressions of it. Like clothing you wore to play a role, like words on a page that hinted at the vastness of what could not be written. And now, as the soul begins to relax into its true state, all the limitations of the body fall away. Your vision is no longer limited to two eyes. Your hearing is no longer shaped by ears. You are not confined to where your feet can walk or what your hands can touch. You are awareness itself, fluid, luminous, and unlimited. And what's most astonishing is how familiar it feels. You don't feel like a stranger in a new place. You feel like someone waking up from a long dream, remembering who you've always been underneath the forgetfulness of form. In this expanded awareness, everything becomes immediate. You think of someone and you feel their presence. You ask a question and the answer rises not in words, but in knowing. You wonder where you are, and instead of receiving a name or a map, you feel the resonance of your environment, a vibrational landscape more real than the ground you once walked on. There are colors here that don't exist on Earth, sounds that are not sounds at all, but movements of consciousness, emotions that no longer fluctuate. They flow, like music, like light, like breath that never ends. And slowly the fear of death begins to seem almost humorous, like waking from a nightmare only to realize the monster was made of mist. You see how much energy was spent avoiding this transition, resisting it, fearing it, but now, on the other side, you realize that nothing essential was ever lost. Your relationships, your wisdom, your essence. They didn't die with your body, they expanded with you. Even your memories are different here. You don't recall the past as a straight line or a string of dates. You remember as a soul remembers, through feeling, through energetic impressions. A moment from your childhood may flood your awareness the same instant you recall something from a past life. Time begins to unravel. It's no longer a master, it's a backdrop. You understand in a flash that your life wasn't linear. It was layered, looped, interwoven with countless others in a web of divine connection. And what's even more surprising, you still feel like you, but not the you defined by age or race or title. Not the you who worried about bills or questioned your worth. That version has faded. What remains is the you that always was, the witness behind the eyes, the presence behind the personality. It's cleaner, purer, more radiant, and free. So free. You don't have to prove anything now. You don't have to earn love, because you are love. You don't have to seek approval, because everything sees you with clarity, and everything accepts you with compassion. There are no masks here, no performance, just being. And being, it turns out, is the most exquisite experience of all. Some souls, after the transition, struggled to accept this, especially those who clung tightly to their identity in life, who feared loss, who believed that without their body they would vanish. These souls may take longer to acclimate, but even then the process is tender. There is no judgment, only patience. Light gathers around them like water around a seed, softening their resistance, warming them into remembrance. And when the moment comes, when they finally let go, the expansion is even more profound. Because it's not just about realizing you're alive, it's about realizing you were never separate, never alone, never outside the flow of creation. You feel yourself, for the first time, not as a thing moving through the universe, but as part of the universe itself. A wave on the ocean, a flame in the fire. The illusion was that you were apart from it. The truth is, you are it. This is what Cayce meant when he said that the soul, after death, becomes aware of dimensions of reality far beyond anything it could imagine in the body. The senses expand, the boundaries dissolve, and yet, instead of becoming overwhelmed, the soul feels more safe than ever, more known, more loved, not by an external god or celestial authority, but by the very fabric of being. Some describe this state as floating, others as flying, but these are metaphors. What really happens is deeper than movement. It's an arrival into presence, into peace that doesn't shift, into clarity that doesn't flicker, into love that doesn't need to be earned, explained, or even understood. It simply surrounds you, holds you, is you, and then something remarkable happens. You begin to realize that the world you left was not a separate place but a layer, a dimension folded inside of this one, that Earth was not the whole story but a chapter, that life and death are not two opposite states but two phases of the same eternal pulse, that even now as you expand beyond the body, there are others still embodied, still dreaming the dream of separation, and they are just as much a part of you as you are of them. You want to reach them, to tell them, to whisper through the veil, "You're okay, you're not alone. Death is not the end, it's just the next breath." And sometimes that whisper gets through, in a dream, in a song, in a sudden knowing that sweeps over someone who misses you. Because consciousness, once freed, does not need permission to connect. It simply moves through love. And love, being the most real thing in the universe, leaves a trail that cannot be erased. So, when the illusion of death dissolves, what remains is not emptiness, it's fullness, not silence but symphony, Not loss, but return. You haven't disappeared. You've expanded. You haven't ended. You've remembered. And all the fear you carried, all the doubts, all the grasping, they fall away like dust in light. You are still you, but now without limits. The moment you leave the body, something extraordinary happens. You don't step into emptiness. You step into presence, into recognition, and often into the arms or energy of those who have been waiting for you. This is the welcoming committee. But don't mistake them as just familiar faces offering comfort at the threshold of death. Their role is far deeper, more profound and sacred than most imagine. They're not there just to say hello. They're there to remind you of the truth you've forgotten, the truth that you were never just this one life, that you were never just this body or this name or this story. You were, and always have been, something more. These beings, some of them souls you've known before, others you may not recognize at first, meet you at the most delicate moment of your existence, a moment when your identity is in flux, your senses are adjusting and your frequency is shifting rapidly. It is a moment when confusion could easily rise, when fear could take hold, if not for their presence. Their job is not just to greet, it is to hold your vibration steady while you reorient, while you remember. Edgar Cayce often spoke of this committee in symbolic language. He described it not just as a group of individuals, but as a field of consciousness, a kind of spiritual net designed to catch the soul as it falls upward into itself, into its origin. This net is woven with love, with memory, with vibrational codes that match yours perfectly. Their presence stabilizes your energy as you undergo the greatest transformation a soul can experience, the return. And that return is not always immediate. You don't step out of one life and instantly remember everything. Most souls carry residue, emotional patterns, attachments, mental loops from their time on Earth. Some are disoriented, some are holding tightly to grief, to regret, to unfinished stories. This is why the welcoming committee is essential. They don't just ease your transition, they gently help you peel away the layers of illusion still clinging to you. Their presence is like standing near a tuning fork. They hold the vibration of remembrance and your soul begins to resonate with it. At first, subtly, a feeling, a flicker, a scent that evokes a place you've never been but deeply know. Then, more vividly, faces, voices, energies that stir something ancient inside you. You begin to recall not just who you were in this last life, but who you were before, the roles you've played, the love you've shared, the vows you've made. You may find yourself face to face with someone you knew as a parent, a child, a best friend, or even someone you hadn't seen since childhood, someone you didn't even realize mattered so deeply. And yet, when you see them again, there's no need for words. Their presence alone unlocks the door. Your heart recognizes them even before your mind does. It's a reunion, yes, but it's more than that, it's a remembering. In some cases, the welcoming committee includes beings of light, guides, angels, ascended teachers, whose essence you may have worked with before this incarnation. You may have never seen them in your physical life, but their energy will feel inexplicably familiar, like a forgotten melody that suddenly plays again, waking up memories you didn't know you carried. They are not strangers, they are co-authors of your journey, witnesses to your most sacred choices and companions through many lifetimes. These beings do not come to judge you, they come to reflect you, to mirror back your divine nature, especially in those first moments when you might still be carrying the smallness of your earth identity. They show you your light, not by telling you, but by simply being in their own. And in their reflection, you begin to remember that you too are made of the same light. The shift after death is vibrational, not geographical. You are not going somewhere in the way we think of physical travel. You are rising into a different frequency, a more subtle layer of reality. And like any shift in vibration, it can be destabilizing if done alone. That's why these welcoming souls are so vital. They surround you with coherence, with grounding, with love that doesn't fluctuate. They hold you steady so you can reassemble the parts of yourself that got fragmented in life. For some, this process is immediate. The veil lifts easily. They feel themselves expand, remember, integrate. But for others, especially those who experienced trauma, resistance, or spiritual disconnection, the process is slower. The committee doesn't rush. They honor your pace. They adapt to your energy. Their only goal is to help you return to your natural state. Not the personality you played, but the soul you are. And this isn't just about comfort. There is a spiritual intelligence in their presence. Cayce described how these beings act almost like energetic translators. When you first enter the non-physical realm, the rules of reality change dramatically. Thoughts are no longer private. Time doesn't operate in sequence. Emotion shapes environment. Intention creates movement. It's like waking into a lucid dream that is far more real than waking life. And without guidance, this can be overwhelming. The Welcoming Committee helps you navigate this new terrain. They don't overwhelm you with information. They help you feel your way forward. They offer impressions, memories, sensations, all designed to help you understand the new laws without fear. They don't lecture, they transmit. They stabilize your field so that your soul doesn't recoil, so you don't shrink back into confusion or cling to the remnants of your old self. And perhaps the most profound part of their role is this: they remind you of your own choice. Death is not the stripping away of agency. In fact, once free from the body, your soul regains its full sovereignty. You begin to see that your life, your death, your path, your pain, it was all part of a greater design, and you were never the victim of it. You were the author, not in every detail, but in every intention. The committee helps you feel this truth. They hold space for your ownership of your journey, and they do it with such deep compassion that even your darkest chapters begin to feel sacred. They don't erase your pain, they help you understand it. They don't promise you answers. They help you remember that you already hold them. They don't carry you. They walk beside you until you're ready to stand in the fullness of your being. And when you are, when your energy stabilizes, when your soul expands, when your awareness begins to hum with the light of recognition, the committee begins to fade, not because they are leaving you, but because you no longer need them in the same way. Their purpose was never to attach, it was to remind. And now that you remember, they step back, still near, still loving, but no longer holding your hand. Because you've returned, not just to the afterlife, but to yourself. There's a subtle truth that echoes through every spiritual tradition, every mystical whisper, every near-death experience and deep meditation. And it is this: you are already in contact with the afterlife. It's not somewhere far away, not a destination waiting in the shadows of some future moment. The afterlife is touching this life, constantly, not with loud signs or booming voices, but with a quiet brush of intuition, synchronicity, dreams, and the feelings you can't quite explain. Edgar Cayce spoke often of this invisible overlap, the idea that life and afterlife are not divided by a wall, but by perception. And your perception isn't fixed. It changes every time you become more aware. Every time you choose stillness instead of reaction. Every time you act from compassion rather than fear. With every choice aligned to your higher nature, you step closer to that unseen world. And what's more, it steps closer to you. You are always being prepared. From the moment you drew your first breath, the preparation began. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every quiet nudge from your intuition has been part of the unfolding. The people who entered your life, and even those who left it, have served as mirrors and messengers, helping your soul to wake up, piece by piece, to something greater. It may not always feel like that, especially in moments of loss or grief, when the veil seems impenetrable. But even then, especially then, the afterlife is closer than you know. In those moments when you sit alone and feel a presence near, or dream of someone long gone and wake with tears in your eyes, that's not imagination. That's your soul remembering. That's the veil thinning just enough to remind you there is more. So many imagine that the afterlife is something that happens later, that we'll figure it all out when we get there, that the beings who greet us will come only when we die. But that's not what Cayce found. According to his readings, the spirits who will meet you in death are already around you now, not necessarily in visible form, but in vibration. They are the quiet protectors, the inner voices, the strange coincidences that rearrange your path just before a mistake. Are family members who passed years ago but show up in your dreams with messages. They are soul companions who haven't entered your physical life yet, but are influencing it from behind the scenes. And just as they are preparing for you, you are preparing for them. Every thought, every choice, every emotional vibration becomes part of your soul's frequency. And that frequency, your spiritual signature, is what draws specific souls to meet you at the threshold. Who greets you in the afterlife isn't random. It isn't chosen by luck or divine lottery. It is the natural magnetism of resonance. You attract what you are in tune with. If you live a life of fear, resentment, and disconnection, your immediate experience after death may reflect that inner state. Not to punish you, but because you have not yet aligned with the light that's already waiting for you. But if you live with intention, if you seek alignment with your deeper self, if you cultivate awareness, then your welcoming is saturated with clarity, with warmth, with familiarity. You will cross the threshold and find not just souls you once loved, but beings you never met in life who recognize you deeply, because you've been vibrating at their level for a long time, and now you finally share the same dimension. Cayce's readings remind us that the soul is never surprised by what it encounters after death, because at some level we already know. Deep down, your soul is aware of what it's creating, of who it's calling toward it. The preparation doesn't happen in some cosmic waiting room. It happens right here, in how you wake up each morning, how you speak to the stranger on the street, how you handle pain when no one's watching. Even the smallest act of love is a preparation. Every time you forgive, you clear a pathway. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you shift your vibration. Every time you pause before reacting, you open your energy to guidance. You're not just improving this life, you're building a bridge to the next one. This isn't about perfection. No soul enters the afterlife perfectly aligned. You will still have questions, still carry pain, still seek healing. But the point isn't to get everything right. The point is to become more aware, to live your life with the understanding that it is not separate from eternity, that what you do here echoes far beyond what you can currently see. The veil is thin, thinner than you think. When you grieve someone you've lost and suddenly feel their presence, it's not imagination, it's proximity. They haven't gone far. They've simply shifted their position, out of sight, but not out of connection. And they may be part of your welcoming committee someday, just as you may be part of theirs. The bond continues. Love once formed doesn't dissolve with death. It deepens, it matures, it becomes more whole. And when the day comes that you leave your body, not in fear, but in sacred surrender, the work you've done now will become your anchor. You'll cross that veil not as someone confused and clinging, but as someone being called home by the very vibration they spent their life building. You'll recognize the ones who greet you not just by their faces but by their feel. That unmistakable resonance of love shared long ago, of promises made beyond time, of recognition beyond words. And they will smile, not because you're perfect, but because you remembered. They will reach for you, not because they had to, but because your soul called them, like a lighthouse calling ships to shore. And you'll remember that you had been preparing for this all along. So live now, as if you are already in eternity. Speak as if your words shape more than moments, because they do. Forgive as if your heart is not limited to this life, because it isn't. Every breath is an invitation, every choice is a preparation, and every heartbeat is one step closer to remembering that the afterlife has already begun.